like to extend a very warm welcome to our honored guest, Director Dr. Manindra Agarwal, Chief Guest Mr. Shyam Benegal, Mrs. Meera Benegal, and Mr. Atul Tiwari, and to one and all present here. This is the 24th edition of Techkriti. Over the years, Techkriti has grown to be the biggest technical festival of Asia. This has been possible because of the tireless efforts of our students. This year, we have a fantastic lineup of shows, talks, exhibitions, and performances. So now, I would like to welcome our Director Sir, our Chief Guest Mr. Shyam Benegal, Mrs. Meera Benegal, and Mr. Atul Tiwari on stage for the lamp lighting ceremony. Please grace us with your presence. Thank you so much. And now we request our director, Professor Manindra Agarwal, to address the gathering. So please.
Warm welcome to our guest, Mr. Shyam Benegal, my colleagues and friends from IIT Kanpur, most importantly, all the participants of the IIT Kanpur started its journey from 58 years ago. So on 2nd November 1959, this institute was registered as the institute is a pioneer in the science-based engineering education. We were the first one to introduce this concept, which was later on copied by this world all over the environments. Today, our institute is one of the finest institutions in the country in the field of engineering and technology. At times, we consider science, engineering, and technology as independent silos. In fact, they are all interdependent and they complement each other. Science raises and studies fundamental problem questions. The engineering converts scientific knowledge or technology. That helps day-to-day living of people. So from fundamentals of science to engineering and to technology, it's one single continuum, and it's very hard to distinguish where one stops and where one starts. Therefore, it's natural for any institution focusing on these aspects to look at all of them together. Now, the students are main assets of any institution. Frankly, we exist because of the students. They are also our biggest source of inspiration, innovation and connection. As evident in the organization. Today's students are tomorrow's leaders. So it is the responsibility of our institutions to nurture them and to make them realize their full potential. The main aim from our side is always to provide them with a platform so that they can bring about new innovations in the field of engineering and technology. Now, with an event like this, we wish to showcase these innovations, and not only from our own students, but also from students from all other institutions in the country. That's technical. It is a competition with a slightly different essence from usual competitions, because at the heart of this event lies innovations which lead to societal missions and benefits. It is also a very important platform for fraternity, for getting to know each other and building strong bonds. Because together we can do things in a way and achieve things which we cannot standing individually, doing things individually. It's our great privilege to have amongst us today a person who has been a great source of inspiration to many of us. Publicly, Dr. Bhushan, and also Dada Sahab Phalke Award. The inventor, I may call it, of this middle cinema movement in this country, who had a far-reaching influence in the way we do cinema, the way we make things. I'm talking of course Mr. Shyam. I wish to thank him and Mr. Benegal for agreeing to visit us and to inspire us despite his extremely position. I would also like to record our appreciation to our brilliant young friends, and ambassadors who are the architects of this conference. IIT Kanpur stands for only one word, that is excellence, and there is no compromise on it. So we should always keep in mind, whatever we do, be it in the classroom or outside, we should always do it the best possible way we can. We should always try to deliver the best. And that applies equally strongly to this event and the organization of this event. I would like to end with a famous quote by Steve Jobs. Quote, "The ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones that do." Unquote. So my friends, I want all of you to think, to dream, to innovate, to create. It's only then that you can really change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom. Next, we have with us Mr. Atul Tiwari. He is a famous Indian screenwriter and actor, especially known for his works in the legendary movies like Three Idiots and Mission Kashmir. He also won the IIT Award for the Best Teleplay for his movies. So we present here a short video clip from one of his works. So we would like to hand over the stage.
friends. It is wonderful to be back amongst you. And my first thanks should go to the students' body, as Manindra sir was saying, the architects of this Techkriti, the young students who have invited me to be here this evening for the opening of the 24th Techkriti. And of course, thanks to Professor Manindra, who has given this free hand to the students that they can choose whom to call, how to conduct this festival, how to do it totally free. So thanks to you, sir. I must congratulate whosoever did it 24 years ago, this name Techkriti. Because Techkriti is such a beautiful name, such a wonderful fusion, such a wonderful marriage of two words, technology and the word in English, and the Hindi word Kriti, which is a creation. So these two words are fused so well here. Somebody has thought of it, somebody has designed this word, somebody has coined this word, somebody has innovated this word, Techkriti, and given a new name which I am sure, if it is not entered the dictionaries of English, it will in a couple of years, definitely. And like this word, I know that a lot of you, like again what Professor Agarwal said, they're from basic sciences to technology and engineering. And these are the three things in which you people are going to excel. Many of you are going to be inventors, planners, innovators, who are going to design devices, design gadgets, tools, systems, schemes, processes, and whatnot come tomorrow. But today I am going to talk to you about design. Sorry, Professor Sakiti, it's your subject, but I am going to talk about design today. Dictionary defines the word design thus: design, a plan or scheme conceived in mind, a purpose, an intention and aim, a goal, a preliminary sketch, a plan or pattern for a picture, a building or a machine, the action or art of planning and creating recordings of functional or aesthetic criteria, selection and arrangement of functional and artistic elements making a work of art, machine or other objects. Now the question is, why do we human beings design? हम डिजाइन क्यों करते हैं दोस्तों? And I hope you not mind अगर मैं बीच में हिंदी में बोलूँ, हिंदुस्तानी में बोलूँ. आप सब लोग हिंदी फिल्में तो देखते ही. 3 Idiots तो आपने हिंदी में देखी होगी, जहाँ मुझे देखा होगा आपने. मैं बीच में हिंदी में भी बोलूँगा, बुरा मत मानिएगा. Why do we design? Why do humans design something? Whether it is clothes that we design, whether it's homes that we design, whether it's a picture that we design, whether it's a dining table that we design in a certain way, certain evening, whether it's a dahi bada that we design, whatever it is, whether it's a bed that we design, whether it's a gadi or balgadi what we design, why do we design things? Why do we design the cities in a certain way? Instruments, monetary institutions, or the whole society, why do we design? The answer is that perhaps we human beings design these things so that our life is a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more beautiful, a little bit more peaceful, a little bit more decorated, or a little bit more secure today than it was yesterday. Perhaps I should share an example of designing with you. One day, a couple on a Techkriti, a scooter, young couple, 2 people, with 2 little kids, one in the godi, one standing in the front, were going from point A to point B. Another man saw them going like this, and suddenly it started raining. The other man thought that, oh my God, now it's raining, either they will get wet and get sick, or they may slip here and hurt themselves. Can I design something for them which will make their travel a little bit easier? But the question was, a family which was going on a scooter cannot definitely afford a car, otherwise they would have gone in a car. But can I design something for them which a man who buys a scooter for 40,000, 50,000 rupees can afford to buy, maybe within lakh of rupees? But it should have something like the car, the protection of the car. But how would he go about it? So he looked for the designs of the small cars all around the world, but he found that the small cars all around the world, whether it was the car of the Swatch company or whether it was the Beetle of Volkswagen, were much more costly even in the bigger cars. So his answer was not there in those small cars. So he had to go to the drawing board to point zero to design something which he wanted for this little family. Anyway, so to bring the prices down, it was necessary that he shortens everything, he shrinks everything, so he started shrinking the size of the car so that there is not much metal used, so that the prices come down. The prices also shrink with the size of the car. But when he shrank it too much to the size of the scooter, it became too cramped, too difficult to sit in, too uncomfortable. So he started increasing the size of the car. The moment he increased the size of the car, the government of India came heavy on them and said that if your car is these many inches long, then the exercise duty will be this much, which will take your price, whatever you make, to be the double of what you were thinking, dreaming. So again he started shrinking and he found a middle ground somewhere. He started shrinking everything. He shrunk the wheels. He shrunk the number of the nuts in the wheels from 4 to 3. He, thinking and started and doing everything, he shifted an engine from the front to the back and everything that he could do. But suddenly it was not easy. It's never easy to design something new. Suddenly, this capitalist who was working on a leftist state, suddenly another person who was neither a leftist nor a rightist came and made his life hell, and he couldn't design his car where he was going to do it. So suddenly this capitalist has to leave the leftist state and go to a rightist state to the other corner of the country and make his car there, which made the prices go up. But ultimately, like people are going to do tomorrow, he was able to give us a car which was known in the country as Lakh Takiya car, a car for a lakh of rupees. You know what I'm talking about. You know I'm talking about Nano. But this Nano, which he designed for a family which couldn't afford the cars as were available in the market, gave safety, gave comfort to only those families who chose to buy that particular car. It didn't give comfort to those who were not there. And it chose to give them comfort and security and safety and everything only till the time they were sitting inside that car. The moment they went and parked it and went outside this car, then there was no guarantee of all the things that Mr. Ratan Tata was dreaming of. Now friends, think of designing a car in which 40 crore people have to sit. 40 crore people, not the 4 people, not the 2 adults and 2 kids. 40 crore people have to sit in a car, and they have to sit there 24/7. They can never step out of their car even if they want. They have to live there, they have to sleep there, they have to die there within that car. But that car has to give, like that little Nano, the safety, security, the beauty, everything, and they have to take their life forward, that little Nano was doing. Can you imagine doing that? Yes, friends, that was done by some people 68 years ago, those who sat in our Constituent Assembly to make the Constitution for India. They were not only designing and writing something on a piece of paper, they were designing a whole nation. You can imagine the problem of designing a whole nation in which those days the population was only 40 crores and now it has tripled since then. And the car also had to be future ready. Little part here and there can change, but it had to be a future ready car which will take us safely from point A in 1950 to point Z whenever it comes. Remember this process of how difficult this must have been. And especially for a country like India, with so many languages, with such a cultural, linguistic, racial, historical, political diversity, and which is not a country but a country with many countries within, with so much of diversity of an emerging nation. You can imagine what was their problem of designing, as you know as designers, that if you think of making a new kind of a little torch, how difficult it is. And here it was to show the light to a whole nation to go forward, to go ahead. Friends, I am neither an expert of Constitution nor a historian. I am a storyteller. But thanks to my Guru Mr. Shyam Benegal here, that I got to tell the story of how Indian Constitution was made for a mini-series a few years back. It's called Samvidhan. It's available on the YouTube. And if the time permits, people should definitely revisit. Just type Samvidhan with a double A on your YouTube and you'll get the links and see the 10 episodes of how this Indian Constitution was designed. And many things have to be included in this design. The fundamental rights, the minority rights, the rights of the states and the center, their duties, our duties as citizens. The fact that who could be citizen itself in the first place. Is anybody who is born in India becomes an Indian citizen? What happens if the Japanese couple has come to IIT and teach and they have a daughter born here in the guest house where we are standing today? Does she automatically become an Indian citizen or not? Like it happens in America, and a lot of people go to America just to deliver the baby, because that's what their constitution allows. So the thing is, who becomes the thing itself? The right to property, the right to liberty, the faith, etc. And many things that were designed in this constitution happened for the first time in the world, like universal adult franchise. That everybody who was an adult had a right to vote, no matter which class, which caste, which gender he or she came from. Believe me friends, many of the countries who we call the advanced countries did not have this right in 1950 when we gave ourselves this constitution. So don't think that Indian constitution, and don't even think that Indian constitution, like some people have this notion that just take the British constitution, delete British and add India and becomes the Indian constitution. No. It's a misinformation if you think that Indian constitution was made like this. Because nobody had the kind of diversity, nobody had the kind of complexities that India had. All the constitutions, including, let's say, the British constitution, which we often people say we copied from, have God in it. India is one of the most God-fearing countries. Even our scientists are wearing one or the other things which have to do with the gods. If you light a lamp today in IIT, it's the old yagna which we are doing to purify the atmosphere. It's not that accidentally chalo ek kuch ritual kar liya, mombatti jala liya, cake cut liya. It's not that. There's a whole history, there's a whole culture behind this lighting of the lamp that we did. So we are a God-fearing country, yet we have kept God out of our constitution. And it was not that suddenly it was thought. No, there were big debates, there was a big thing, there was a voting. And after that, the God went out of the constitution. There's no God in Indian constitution. Whereas the British constitution starts with the name of the God. In the name of God, we give ourselves this constitution. We don't. So there are so many beautiful things there which go with our constitution, and it's necessary that we take a look at our constitution, friends. And wonderful thing is that you live in the city of Kanpur, which fought very, very bravely in the first War of Independence in 1857. And 1857 was the first time that an India which was governed by many of small principalities and of course by the British provinces which were run by the company then. In 1857, Indians tried to give themselves a constitution for the first time during this big war of independence, where Kanpur had a big hand to play. And slowly and by, after long fight since then, when in 1946, even before we became independent, the Constitutional Assembly started working. On the 9th of December 1946, a delegation of some people went to meet with Mahatma Gandhi. What happened at that time? They had a lot of questions in their minds that how should our constitution be, which they did not know how much time they'll take to make it. It took them about 3 years to make it. They went to see Mahatma Gandhi to seek his advice, to seek his blessings. This little scene directed by Mr. Shyam I would like to share with you before I end my address. Can we now play the thing?
के पास पहुंचे।
आइए आइए जगजीवन बाबू, मुझे पता है हम चाहे दुनिया का सबसे सुंदर संविधान क्यों न बनाए, पर वो भी बेकार साबित होगा अगर उसे अमल में लाने वाले लोग ना हुए।
बापू, मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि हमारे यहाँ ऐसे अच्छे आदमियों और औरतों की कोई कमी नहीं है जो हमारे संविधान को कारगर करके दिखाएंगे। इसलिए हम सब आपका आशीर्वाद लेने आए हैं।
बापू के आशीर्वाद हमेशा तुम्हारे साथ है, पर आज मैं तुम्हें एक तावीज, एक टोटका दूंगा जो शायद तुम्हें सही संविधान बनाने में मदद करे।
आप और तावीज? बापू, मुझे लगता था आप तंत्र मंत्र यंत्र में विश्वास नहीं रखते।
पर इस मंत्र पे पक्का विश्वास है मेरा। जब कभी अपने आप को शंका में घिरा पाओ तो इस परीक्षा को अपनाना। सबसे दीनहीन, गरीब, कमजोर इंसान जिसे तुमने देखा हो उसका चेहरा याद करना और स्वयं से पूछना, जो मैं करने जा रहा हूं क्या इससे उसका भला होगा? इस कदम से क्या उसे कुछ मिलेगा या नहीं? इससे क्या वो अपने भाग्य और जीवन को सुधार पाएगा या नहीं? या यूं कहो, ऐसे करोड़ों को स्वराज मिलेगा या नहीं जो तन और मन की भूख से तड़प रहे हैं? जिनके पेट भी खाली हैं और हृदय भी। फिर देखना तुम्हारी सारी शंकाएं छूमंतर हो जाएंगी।
Friends, today I can only say this to you that your Techkriti, your fusion of technology and creativity will really become beautiful and meaningful to our country if you listen to this advice. That whatever you're going to design tomorrow as the innovators, as the inventors, as the planners, which you will, you have to keep this advice of Babu, which he gave 68 years ago, in mind, that whatever you are designing, whatever you are making, whatever you are inventing, whatever you are planning, is it going to affect that last person who will never get a chance to come to this IIT, who has not even heard this word called IIT? And is it going to, as Babu says, is it going to feed his stomach and feed his soul, feed his heart, and to make his life a little bit more convenient and beautiful and meaningful? I think that's when we will really become designers, inventors, scientists, technologists, technicians, engineers who India will need tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It was a great pleasure listening to you and watching such an inspiring work of yours. So our next guest is a man who needs no introduction. An Indian director and a screenwriter, a Padma Bhushan awardee, a recipient of the greatest award in the history of cinematography, the Dada Saheb Phalke Award. Mr. Shyam is truly a gem of personality. He has won the National Film Award for Best Feature Film in Hindi 7 times. In addition to his several acclaimed films, he has created a new genre which we call the middle cinema in India. It is truly a pleasure to invite him on stage. So may we have a huge round of applause for Shyam.
Good evening. You know, I've heard this word middle cinema twice this evening. And I've always felt that you either have mainstream cinema or you make films that are off the mainstream. But this terminology of middle cinema is something that I've always been, I've always felt somewhat strange. What does it mean? Because if I were to walk on the middle of the road, I'd be run down immediately. So clearly, either we make films of the kind that conventionally films are made, or we make films that are away from the convention. So in my case, I certainly, when I started making films, I was not particularly fond of the kind of films that were being made, the mainstream kind of films. And so I wanted to make my own kind of film. I was not the first one to do that. There were many people before me who had already started making films like this, not only in different parts of the world, even in India. And so when I decided to make films, they were in some ways the models on which I started designing my films. On the basis of that, I started. But actually, you finally have to find your own voice. And I think it took me a long time to find my own voice. And I do believe I have found my own voice in the cinema. But that's not what I'm going to be talking about today. I thought what I would do, because you happen to be an educational institution, I would really talk about the history of Indian cinema. Because the Indian cinema is unique in so many different ways. Our cinema is unlike any other cinema made in other parts of the world. We have a form which is very different from in films made anywhere else. Our mainstream cinema, it has a form that is totally unique to ourselves, and our audiences love it. Incidentally, I hate it. But that's a different thing altogether. But let me begin by saying that you see, the first person to use a film camera in our country, Mr. Bhattacharya, today happens to be his birth anniversary, 15th of March. And he made his first film in 1896, 3 years after the Lumiere brothers invented the cinema. In fact, it happened that 3 years later, one of the Lumiere brothers, Louis Lumiere, came to Bombay and he showed this new invention of the cinema. And among that audience was Mr. Bhattacharya. And he saw this and instantly decided that he should get himself a camera, a film camera, which he did. And the same year, a few months later, he made a film on a wrestling match. And that happens to be the very first Indian film ever made, which was made in 1896. But of course, that's not considered really the very first film. The very first film that was made was actually by him, Bhattacharya, when a very famous senior wrangler, R.P. Paranjpe, mathematician, who was returning from England, he filmed him getting off the ship in a polo bundle in the year 1902. Now that officially we consider the very first film that we made. Because at that time we discovered that the technology of cinema, because this was the very first time there was also a recognition that we were on the way to creating an art that did not depend entirely only on human beings doing things with their own hands and minds, but making use of another technological device. So technology, the technological art, the very first technological art, which we now call the ninth muse, was the cinema. And of course television and everything else has come after that. But it's very interesting that you are an institution of technology, and this was the very first art that came via the use of technology. And cinema was that art, and it's the ninth muse. Of course, now we have the 10th muse, which is television, and everything else that follows. But let me not sort of deal too much with only this. And it's really interesting to look at how we developed the kind of form of cinema that we created for ourselves. You see, Indian cinema, when I say is very different from any other kind of cinema, mainstream cinema particularly, is because we tell our stories through different kinds of means, using often songs, music,
dances and so on. Even if we are telling, stories that deal with melodrama, tragedy, comedy, all sorts of things like that. But we have songs and dances. And why do we do this? It's because, historically speaking, Indian cinema began from a point when, in the middle 19th century, India, particularly urban India, particularly Bombay, Calcutta, Madras, Delhi, these were the four cities where we had urban theatre. And the urban theatre was imitating, at that time, the forms of theatrical entertainment that were revealed in Britain. And the forms of theatrical entertainment in Britain, which was being brought to India by the British, were music hall features. And the music hall features invariably had little skits and little stories and different kinds of things, accompanied often with little dances and songs and so on. And immediately this got the attention of the people who were creating urban theatre in India, particularly in places like Bombay and Calcutta. These were the two cities where you had certain theatre entrepreneurs, who decided that they should create Indian theatre with these kind of interludes, having little songs, little dances, all that sort of thing, but tell serious stories. And so you could tell stories of all, whether they were classics, there were great classics that were being told. You could take, Shakuntala, for instance, or something like that, or you could even take Western stories adapted to Indian forms, but with them you always had songs and dances. And so this kind of theatrical form, which became very popular, became the form of what we now call the Parsi Urdu theatre. And why it was called the Parsi Urdu theatre was because the entrepreneurs, the people who produced these things, were essentially Parsis of Bombay. And the language they used was actually Hindustani, Urdu Hindustani, and that is how you had this Parsi Urdu theatre format, which became very popular in urban India. And so when cinema actually came, at that time it was silent, so there was no question of any of this coming into the cinema at that time. But when sound came, which was in India, it came in 1930, and when sound came immediately, you see, cinema otherwise was evolving a kind of aesthetic which was internationally common to our films as well as to films made in Europe or anywhere else at the time. But the moment sound came to Indian cinema, suddenly we went back to a theatrical form that was really late 19th century. Parsi Urdu theatre found itself a voice. And so with sound cinema came the kind of cinema which we now recognize as our mainstream cinema. And that started in 1931. So you had the very first thing, in those days, you would call it Hindustani film, was Alam Ara. And Alam Ara was a film that goodness knows how long it originally was, but it had 30 songs. It was truly something quite dramatic and unique for its time. It had 30 songs, and that became the fashion. So you had film after film that would have different kinds of songs and so on. So you suddenly had all those people who were losing their jobs, as singers, particularly light singers, free singers and so on and so forth. They got their jobs back in films as singers, not only sometimes as actor singers, but largely as playback singers. So you had a whole new system that started to develop, which that hasn't happened anywhere else in the world except in India, the job of playback singer. Playback singer, today of course, you well know that playback singing in India is a very important component of Indian cinema. And some of, more people have heard somebody like Lata Mangeshkar than any other Indian singer ever. More records have been sold of hers than some of the greatest classical singers of our country. So this is such an important component of our films. And so then you have that whole process suddenly developing. You have a mainstream cinema that starts to develop like this. And then but what is happening is that, see, when you look at when cinema found its voice in 1930s, what was happening to the rest of the country? You had the nationalist movement. And the nationalist movement was all-pervading in many ways, particularly in urban India. And cinema couldn't be unaffected by it. So you had films that were being made connected in one way or another with the nationalist movement. Although people used to say, like say for instance, Mahatma Gandhi felt that Indian cinema was really totally unconnected with Indian life. But the funny part of it was that at that time, you had filmmakers who were making films. You had different, Premchand, for instance, had written a story called Mazdoor. In fact, he wrote a screenplay for that, and the film was also made. But unfortunately, it didn't do well. And so you had not only him, but later on you had people like Sadhana Manto, a full lot of first-rank writers who wrote for films, made films, but none of them actually succeeded. Because people who went to the cinema didn't really connect with the fact that they were there to connect with life. They were going into the cinema in order to take a holiday from life. It was like they were wanting to go there, escape from what was happening. And because that was the duality of the cinema, that we started to develop the concept that it was really meant to be an escape from your everyday life. And that is how cinema developed. And as it kept developing over a period of time, through the 40s, 50s of the last century, into the 60s, there were slowly a kind of unhappiness that was developing among what one might call the educated urban middle classes of the country. That they were not being, they felt that they weren't really satisfied with the kind of films that they were seeing. And they saw it as kind of escapist entertainment, etc., but nothing that expressed anything that they felt or lived with, etc., as they got in other arts. For instance, in literature, for instance. The aesthetic enjoyment that they got out of literature, they couldn't get out of the cinema. And that was what really led, for a breakaway from the mainstream in the 1950s, when somebody like Satyajit Ray came on the scene. And when Ray came on the scene, there was suddenly in Bengal, there was an immediate ferment. So you had people like Tikata and Kanal said, and a few people like that suddenly looking at cinema in a completely different and very interesting sort of way. And then that caught the imagination of filmmakers in Kerala. And in Kerala, and there's a connection there, because you see, in Kerala, you have a population that is largely literate, largely educated, and therefore it was easier for them to take on to cinema of this kind. And so you had then in 1960s kind of movement in Kerala with films of a particular kind that were being made, which eventually led to people like Anuruddha Balakrishnan and Aravindan and so on, who made absolutely remarkable films a generation later. But as far as Hindi cinema was concerned, there was still some time to go. And it was only, I think, really sometime in late 1960s, early 70s, when suddenly you had M.S. Satyu making a film called Garmava. And with Garmava, you suddenly start to see that in the Hindi cinema, you have people who are thinking in terms of things that are films that are related to your life, to your history, connected to the way we live, etc., and so on and so forth. And that led, in fact, to people like myself and a whole lot the filmmakers of my generation who came a little after that to make the kind of films we did. But then we didn't really find great success. So we continued to be, as somebody said, you said, middle cinema. So, you see, it wasn't middle cinema really, it was an alternate kind of cinema from the mainstream, but didn't find a great success. But there was a certain amount of success that was there, did get a certain amount of success, but what made for these films to become more successful over a period of time actually was when television came. And it was through television, because when some of these films came on television, that is when the rest of the entire country started to see these films. And that is when the connection between mainstream cinema and alternate cinema, they started to come together. So today, nobody talks about alternate cinema, just as nobody says mainstream cinema or middle cinema or any kind of cinema. Cinema is cinema. And some people make certain kinds of films, other people make other kinds of films. And it's a question of what your personal choices and the kind of personal aesthetic that you have for the kind of films you make. Basically, this is what it is. So ultimately, when you talk about cinema, you have to see it as an art, and of course, more importantly, as probably the very first art that came out of technology. Without that, it wouldn't have happened. So the ninth muse is the muse that came with technology, and people like you who created it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for devoting your precious time and endowing us with your words of wisdom and experience. So now, I would now request our director, sir, to present a token of appreciation to our esteemed guests. So please. So, we thank you all for joining us today. Hope you have an amazing and memorable experience in the coming few days of Techkriti. Thank you.
इधर बैक की तरफ लगे उनको काम